Today I will teach you common traps and mistakes in the Ruy Lopez opening that begins with e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop coming out to b5 with an attack on this knight. This opening is more than 500 years old. You could almost say it is the main line of chess. And if you haven't already watched my introduction to the Ruy Lopez, I will have a link in the description that will teach you the common strategy of this opening. Now I'm going to show you some really cool traps that you can spring on black if you're playing with white. I will also show you some traps that you can play against this if you're facing it with the black pieces. But since we are cheering for the white pieces in this opening, I will show you the refutation of black's traps as well. Oh, hello, Bob. Hello, yes, Marcus. So, to what do I owe the honor of you entering the board here? Well, I'm just here to remind you to plug your Patreon. Do you mean that I should plug patreon.com/ASMRchess and sort of put it on the screen? Yes, exactly. Alright, but why is it I should do that? Well, it is because that if you build up a big enough following on Patreon, you will not need to rely on clickbait, and you can continue producing quality material and content and put it out even if your channel continues to suffer as a result of this new strategy employed by YouTube that is kind of punishing, mid-sized creators like you. Oh, right, yeah, that sounds so reasonable, but can you tell me exactly what would be in it for the patrons who would choose to donate on a monthly basis? Or don't you remember you actually already decided to put out exclusive videos for the patrons so that they can see some extra material from you that they would not otherwise be able to? Oh, right. I do remember. Okay, thank you very much for reminding me of that. Now, if you would please excuse me, I have some traps, and I also have some common mistakes that I need to teach the ASMR chess audience. Right, I will leave. I will just have one last note and say that the ASMR chess audience is the most amazing audience in all of the internet. Well, absolutely, I have really seen that time and time again, particularly since they found out that the channel was struggling a little bit. I've just seen this amazing outpouring of love, and it has just been absolutely amazing. But I really must bid you farewell now. Alright, see you. Alright, the first thing I should do is I should correct a mistake from the last video. Yes, I made a blunder in that video, and I said in that video that in this position the main move a6 and bishop dropping back, knight f6, castles, and knight takes e4. I called this the Berlin defense, and it looks very, very, very similar to the Berlin defense, but this is not correct, as was pointed out by two patrons, Ewan and Aria. Thank you very much. This is the Ruy variation, the Ruy Gambit, I think even it's called. So this is not the Berlin. This is also not something you're going to see very much. So if we go back to what is known as the tabia of the Ruy Lopez, which is this position. The Berlin defense here is knight to c6 immediately. And there is a very cool trap here that you, as a white, can spring on black, and you can win many games with this. And I would like to show you that as the first chapter. I call this the Berlin Defense 1% trap, and I will show you and tell you and explain to you exactly why that is. In this position, the main line of the Berlin Defense is you castle your king away, leaving the defense of this pawn. So this is undefended. They will then come in here, this is the main line, and capture this pawn with knight takes e4. And in the main line Berlin Defense, if you see Magnus Carlsen, Hikaru Nakamura, Deng Lishen, some of these people, if they play this line with, and they are facing this with a white, they will play pawn to d4. I suggest that you play a different move that is also completely okay and will help trap your opponent so you can win the game quickly. And that move is rook to e1, attacking this knight immediately before playing pawn to d4. And here the main line, and absolutely the best move, and the whole idea of the Berlin Defense is to drop this back now to d6. And it looks weird, but it is attacking the bishop, and this is the whole point of the Berlin Defense. If your opponent is playing this, it means that they have studied the Berlin Defense, they have a strategy, they know many different crucial positions. So in order to spring a trap on your opponent in this position, you will probably need to play something that they have not seen before. And that is why I call this the 1% trap. And that is because there is a move here that when you go on the Lichess database of amateurs playing chess, and if you filter through the games, you can see it in this position, only 1% of the white players play knight to c3 here. And that means that there is a very great chance that your opponent will not have looked at this. What is the point of this move? Okay. The point is that the best move for black, and also the move that they want to play, and the move that they are indeed playing in 2/3 of every game from this position, is knight takes bishop. Thinking that you put this knight out to just defend this bishop, and they know how important that bishop is for you in this opening here. But you're going to give them a huge surprise here. You're not going to recapture the knight. You are going to capture this e5 pawn. Not with the rook, but with the knight. Knight takes e5. Here the critical move for black to play is bishop e7, and this is something you can even investigate yourself. This is completely fine for white, but the amateur players that play, for instance, on Lichess are not playing this move. No, the most popular move here is a losing mistake, which is why it is very, very beneficial for you and your chess to know how to punish this. Most players will in this position play knight takes knight on e5, which actually loses almost immediately in spectacular fashion. And we will see the real hidden point behind knight to c3 very soon. So you come in just snap that off and you have a very easily winning advantage. The only move is bishop to e7. And you can see how this bishop is pinned by this rook to the king. And here is the point of knight to c3. We are not going to play rook takes knight. We are not going to play knight takes knight. That would not give much of an advantage. While this move here, knight d5, attacking the pinned piece, is basically game over for black. You just have to know how to exploit this. In almost all games here, black castles, trying to get out of this horrible threat of capturing here with check here. So black castles, and you then play knight takes bishop on e7. This is check. It's nicely defended by the rook, so the queen cannot come in and recapture. Therefore, king h7 is the only move. And now, little question for you, my dear viewer. Do you know what Magnus Carlsen's favorite checkmate is? It is the Anastasia mate, and it is a mate that can occur. It's actually one of the oldest documented checkmate patterns we have. It's a checkmate that can occur when we have this knight blocking these two squares for the king. So what we do is we play queen h5, and I'll just show you the critical variations. First, what is the threat? If they say, okay, it looks dangerous, but we don't know exactly what the threat is, and they play the most common move, which is pawn to d6, attacking the rook. Well, here is the checkmate, the sort of prototypical Anastasia checkmate, which is queen takes on h7 with a check, allowing only one move. King takes queen, and of course rook. That's a nice move. I can understand why Carlsen liked this rook to h5 checkmate with the two crucial escape squares covered by this knight. And it's also always nice to give up the queen in the opening for a forced checkmate. So let's just say, just so you know what to do, excuse me, this is here, that black is not playing e6, allowing the d6 rather, allowing this queen takes with a checkmate in 2. Let's say, for instance, they play pawn to g6. Here, you want to checkmate on the dark squares. You could go queen g5, but actually queen h4 is a little stronger, because they are going to try to block you coming here, which would be immediate checkmate. They're going to try to block that with pawn to f6. Now you're not being hit by this pawn because you are on h5 rather than on h4 rather than on g5. And here you can come in and take this with impunity, because this pin from the queen on the pawn can capture here. King will have to move, and the knight is nicely defending on e7, so you slide your rook in here with this checkmate threat, and there is basically nothing at all they can do. Your opponents are not going to find this defense, but I will just show you how to delay checkmate for the longest time possible. For black, it would be rook to f7, rook takes rook, only defense is king takes rook, queen takes h7. That is check. The only way to avoid checkmate is to briefly go into the middle of the board with the king, king to e6, and we just check, check, check. check with the knight here. Knight to f4 check. King to e5. Let's give up the knight because we just want the king close enough to our forces that that we can trap him very easily. So queen h4 check, just saying you can come in and capture this knight because we have, can you find checkmate in one? Pawn to d3, checkmate from the bishop, taking away e4 as an escape square. This pawn takes care of this, queen takes care of this, this. So that would be checkmate. Okay, I will do a little thing here. Maybe a little time consuming, but it's very good for your chess. I will repeat the moves. Repeat. That is the key to learning, I feel. Staying humble, being honest and true, and repeating. So, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and bishop b5, the Ruy Lopez, knight to c6, the Berlin defense, castles, knight takes e4, the main line. Here we play our slight deviation. The pros play pawn to d4, and then after that they go rook to e1, but we play rook e1 immediately. Knight drops back, and here is the 1% move. Can you remember the 1% move? The one that they are not ready for. It's knight to c3, knight takes bishop, knight takes pawn, knight takes knight, rook takes knight, bishop to e7 forced, and knight d5 with an attack on the bishop. King has to castle away, and what is the checkmate we are going for? Remember, it is Magnus Carlsen's favorite checkmate. What is it? First we capture the bishop with bishop takes, with knight takes bishop, that is check, forcing king to h8. And what is the mate after king to h8 that Magnus Carlsen has as his favorite checkmate? The favorite checkmate pattern. It is the Anastasia mate. So we attack with the queen to h5. And we just saw how you win after g6. You go back here with an attack, checkmate threat on the dark squares, and if f6 we saw that whole variation. So what if they try to defend on h7 by playing h6? Here it is actually really rather simple. You play pawn to d3 because you are absolutely willing to come in and capture this pawn with this bishop. That is really all you need to know. They can not try to chase your queen away. It's going to be checkmate. And if they try something like this with an attack on the rook, well, you have the Anastasia checkmate set up. You don't need the rook. You just come in and capture, like so. For instance, bishop takes here, and there is just nothing really that white can do if they capture the rook. We can just move the bishop with checkmate, and that is the last of the variations I'm going to show you on how to set up some really nice traps against an unsuspecting opponent in the Berlin defense. Now let's go to chapter 2, the fishing pole trap. This is something that you must be aware of. I'll show you the main variation of it. It's something that black will very, very often try to spring on you. And it is something you must not fall for. And they will try this pattern in many variations. So even though you may not get this exact main line of it, you will benefit greatly from knowing the pattern, as it will be relevant in many, many games in the Ruy Lopez and even in other openings as well. So we repeat, of course, we repeat the Ruy Lopez. E4, E5, knight to F3, knight to C6, and bishop sliding out with an attack on the knight here on B5. This is also something that black will try with the Berlin defense, with a knight to C6, to F6 rather, but it's not really the Berlin defense. They have a completely different idea. So you're going to castle. That's the move we recommend, and here they may try to throw this move at you. Knight to and this is very provocative. Knight to G4, knight to G4. And the first move that is very natural is also the one that you really need to play here. You want to kick this knight away with pawn to H3. And the best move for black is actually to respect this and move back. But that's not why they are playing the fishing pole trap. They are going to play H5. And here the point is that you don't capture the knight. That's kind of all you need to know. Actually, in this position, you play on as if nothing had happened. You know, if you watched the first Ruy Lopez video, that one of the main things that you want to do is you want to play pawn to C3 to threaten to play pawn to D5, and you have all these sort of ideas on how to develop the pieces. There is a plan for each piece that you can know, and that's just what you do. You just play C3 and you say your knight is not doing anything, it's not accomplishing anything, and it's just a liability because I may come in and capture it once your trap won't work anymore. And what is the trap? What is it that they want you to do? They want you to capture the knight. This is not what you're going to do because you will lose, but you must know why. And then they play pawn takes pawn, attacking this knight. And no matter where the knight goes, most people play knight to H2. You have this huge, huge problem now of queen to H4. And it looks like that you may be able to get out of this checkmating attack here by playing, for instance, pawn to F3. So after they come and capture here, you can get out like this. But you cannot get out like this because they know this, they want you to play this, and they don't capture. No, they play pawn to G3, taking away this square. And this is just something that you do not want to see. I mean, the only move to survive checkmate is rook e1. And there is a variation I'll just show you. Queen takes check, king here, check, here, takes, here, knight check, here, and queen to F2. The knight is protected. This king is out in the opening, out in the open. Most people play rook F1 here. You have check here, and black is going to snag up this bishop, and you don't have to be like a grandmaster to see that black has an absolutely crushing position here. So that is why you just play c3 and just say, well, you didn't accomplish anything with this knight. I'm not going to fall for the trap. It's just a liability. Just let it be a liability for your opponent. Because once, for instance, they castle and they don't have the rook here to back up this fishing pole attack, you can just come in and capture the knight. So it will have to move at some point. So it's not good for black if you don't fall for the trap. It's not good for black if you don't fall for the trap. Okay. Let's set up the pieces again. And let's move on to the third chapter. I have 4 chapters in this video. The first was the 1% trap. This second was the fishing pole trap. And now we are coming for something called the Cordel Gambit. This is a very aggressive option for black, but I'm going to show you a way to throw that aggression right back in their face and play some very cool moves that can win you the game quite quickly. So it's the same thing: e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop b5, attacking the knight. But here they may not go for the Berlin defense. They may not go for the Morphy and the Ruy Lopez, the main line with attacking this bishop. They may go for an aggressive bishop to c5. And against this, what would you want to play? This is a little dubious for black, but it is very aggressive. What is the downside of this move? The downside is, as in the main line of the Ruy Lopez, you want to play pawn to c3 and you want to play pawn to d4. If the bishop is on c5 rather, if the bishop is here, it will be hit with d4 and will gain a tempo. The bishop will have to move and you will get a lead in development. You will get a lead in time. And that is why you play pawn to c3 here. It's a very natural response in the Ruy Lopez to seeing a bishop on c5. And what is black's idea? Black's idea is to play this gambit where they play pawn to f4. Okay, pawn to f4. Because they want you to bait you into capturing this, which you are not going to do, because they can then push this, and this knight is, it has a hard time moving anywhere. This is taken by the queen, this is taken by the queen, this is taken by the knight, and this is maybe okay, but they see knight takes, pawn takes, and bishop takes, you lose a pawn. So the Cordel Gambit, do not accept that. Instead, trust in the Ruy Lopez, trust in the idea of playing pawn to d4. Here, they will say, okay, I was threatening by playing f5, I was threatening to capture on e4 with an attack here. If you capture my bishop, I will capture your knight, and this should be quite good for black, except you have a cool move. You have knight g5. So this bishop is still attacked, and in this position the bishop is now covering this square, so they cannot come in and capture it. They will have to move the bishop. So you're saying, oh, you wanted to gambit a pawn? Well, no, I gambit a pawn. You wanted to get the initiative? No, I get the initiative. You have to move backwards now. They drop the bishop back to b6. And here is the move. You don't care about coming in and capturing here, getting your pawn back, anything like that. No, you push with d5, attacking this knight. The knight will have to move, and the most common move in this position is a beautiful mistake. The most common move is knight to e7. So here is just an absolute beauty of a move. So usually we go for checkmating the king, but we can also checkmate the queen. And there is a pin on this pawn here. The bishop makes it so that this pawn can't move. So in this position, knight to e6, knight to e6 cannot be captured, and the queen cannot get out, and you're going to win the queen, and you're going to have a winning game here. So I wanted to include this because it's just like a super cool pattern, and it's very useful to know. Okay, let's get to the fourth and final chapter, which is on something called the improved Steinitz defense. So this is something you will also see quite often. You play e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. And again, it's one of these Berlin defense looking openings with knight to f6, but they're not going for the Berlin defense proper. You are still castling as you do every time in this position. No, they are going for this improved Steinitz defense with pawn to d6, because they want to play this annoying move. This is very, very often a very annoying move for you as a Ruy Lopez player. Bishop to g4, pinning this knight, because this knight is needed to attack the dark squares in the center, particularly to support a d4 later. That is why you play h3 in many variations before they are allowed to jump in with this bishop, but not this time. Because here you want some sort of sideline, some sort of trap that you can spring against black, and this is extremely subtle. It's very nice and has a very high success rate. It's rook to e1, allowing this bishop to come to g4 and pin this. And quite interestingly, here you can play d4, even though this is pinned, even though you haven't played pawn to c3 to support it, even though we have two defenders here. This one is not real because it's pinned by this bishop, so you are of course threatening to come here and win this knight, which they of course cannot tolerate. So the natural move is pawn takes pawn. You could come in and capture it with the queen, but that's not the cool trap. The cool trap is e5. This attacks the knight. This attacks the d6 pawn. But also look at the rook. And look at the king, who didn't castle to safety in time. And now black is in huge, huge trouble. They will try to play d takes e5. Of course, what could make any more sense than that? And here it is. Here it is. You're going to temporarily sacrifice your queen. The whole point of this way of playing it with rook to e1 this early was that to make this pin here just a mere illusion, not a real pin, because you are going to come in and capture on e5, allowing bishop takes queen. And now your opponent thinks, oh, I'm so great, I got the queen. But of course, knight takes knight on c6 is check. And after something like king to d7 and knight takes queen is check. From the bishop, they will have to recapture with the king, and you capture their bishop. And if we take a look, you can see both of you lost a queen, that cancels out. Both lost a knight, that cancels out. You lost a pawn, and they lost a pawn, and then you lost another pawn. So you are down one pawn, but you are up a bishop. That's the last one. Bishop is worth 3 pawns, so you are up what we would say is 2 points of material. Black can't castle. You are attacking this center pawn with your rook. You are basically just cruising here, going to have a pretty easily winning game. So that is it. I hope that you enjoyed the video. I hope that I will see you in the next video. Thank you very, very, very much for watching. Bye.